Good evening, and thank you for joining us for episode 7 of our series of candidates and conversations leading up to the 2020 general election on November 3rd. Tonight's event is honored to be hosted by the UC Merced Community Engagement Center and the Office of Government and Community Relations. My name is Jesse Espinoza.
And my name is Maria Osegueda.
And as fourth-year students majoring in political science and public health, we are excited to be moderating the discussion this evening.
During this series, as we sit behind our computer screens, hearing from the candidates that hope to help rebuild our community's future, it's clear that we are in unprecedented times. Due to the pandemic, we can't gather to engage in healthy debate and discussion like we normally would. So we felt it was important to find a way for members of our community at UC Merced, including students, faculty, and staff, to engage with the candidates running to represent them.
But this virtual format also makes it easier for the UC Merced community to invite our friends and neighbors to join us in the discussion from the comfort of their own home and without having to deal with campus parking. So welcome to all. And please be sure to let your local family, friends, and neighbors know that they are welcome to join us for the upcoming sessions if they miss this one. Additionally, please be sure to remember to register to vote or make sure that you're already registered to vote by visiting registertovote.ca.gov.
Before we get started, we would like to pause to acknowledge all local Indigenous peoples, including the Yokuts and Miwok, who inhabited this land, and thank them for allowing us to live, work, learn, and collaborate on their traditional homeland. Let us now take a moment of gratitude to pay respect to their elders and to all Yokut and Miwok people, past and present. Thank you. Now let me go over a few items. All participants are muted upon entry. We encourage you to use the speaker view instead of the gallery view. We will start with some pre-selected questions for the candidate. Participants can type questions into the chat and we will get to as many as we can during our time. If you would like to ask your question live, please use the raise hand function to let us know in the chat and we will unmute you to do so. Again, we will get to as many questions as we can during our allotted time. Reminder that this is meant to be a conversation, an opportunity to get to know the candidates. So please keep it respectful and on topic. So without any further ado, let's get started. Tonight, we have the opportunity to hear from Kevin Cookingham, candidate for California's 16th Congressional District. Mr. Cookingham, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, let's get started with the basics. Please tell us about your background and why you decided to run for Congress.
Sure. So I grew up in the Fresno area in the Clovis Unified School District, and we grew up on 6 acres. So I was not a lot of land to be a farmer, but we raised Dale calves and pigs and goats and chuckers and chickens and turkeys and guineas and just about anything you can imagine. I had pigs. At one time I had 38 pigs, and I had the life of Riley doing that in the country. And I wish every kid could experience taking care of animals. And so that's kind of how I grew up. There were 4 boys in our family, and everything was going fine until I hit age 13 and my dad suddenly died. He was a head of the athletic department at Fresno City College, and he had a virus that went to his heart. So immediately he died and left my mother with 4 boys to raise. And so that kind of changed some things in our lives. But my mother was a wonderful lady, and my grandfather actually moved from Oregon to live in our home right next to us, and went to Clovis High, graduated in 1976 from Clovis High School, then on to Fresno Pacific, and then I decided to take a wrestling scholarship at UCLA. Many years ago, they had wrestling at UCLA, and so I took that until my shoulder went out and came back to Fresno State. Graduated from Fresno State, went back to Fresno State for my master's in marriage, family, child counseling. I spent 5 years as the campus life director in Fresno Madera. That's an area under Youth for Christ, so it's ministry. And then I went into education and I became a counselor that focused on AODA issues, and that stands for alcohol and other drug abuse issues. And from that point on, I was in education, worked in education for a total of 25 years. In between that, I left and went to Hume Lake Christian Camps for 5 years and was a director of programs and development there. Pretty much every position I've ever had has been a leadership position. The last 7 years with Clovis Unified, I was the principal of 2 schools at the same time. I was principal of Clovis Adult School and principal of Clovis Online School. And one of the things that were so important at Clovis Adult anyway, is that we had our career tech education programs there. And we took people from low economic areas, got them into our health and business programs, and they passed their state exams and got them into the workforce. And we had tremendous success there in that. So that's a wonderful amount of experience I got in regards to getting people and positioning them for success.
All right. Well, thank you for letting us know a little bit more about you.
Sure.
Now, on to our next question.
Thank you. The next topic centers around prosperity. So a walk down Merced Main Street in the year 2020 will show you a revitalization boom. Historic theaters are getting new facelifts. New bars, restaurants, and businesses are opening. Pre-COVID, Merced has experienced the highest personal income growth in any metro area in the country for the past 5 years. This Central Valley city is beginning to look like a place of prosperity. Yet, 43% of all babies and toddlers that live in our county live in poverty. Merced is surely a city on the rise, but some citizens in our county are getting left on the ground. What will you do as California's 16th congressional district representative to make sure that prosperity gets back on track and is shared evenly amongst Mercedians?
Yeah, so this is a big deal. You mentioned the prosperity before the pandemic. The United States was at 3.5% unemployment. That's the envy of the world, having a 3.5% unemployment. But in the 16th district, in Fresno, Madera, and Merced counties, 16.9%, according to Ballotpedia. So horrible. This is one of the poorest areas in the nation in regards to that. So here's what I would do. And by the way, this is one of the first things I would do, and I don't have to get any approval from Congress. I would start these work programs that I learned I learned to be successful with at Clovis Adult School. I'd start them in Fresno, Madera, and Merced. We do them monthly, where we'd pull in social services, we'd pull in community colleges and other colleges, we pull in adult schools, job placement people, and we start positioning people for success. You don't just have a job. You know, if you don't have a skill, you're going to get paid minimum wage. I want people to get paid higher than a minimum wage. And so it's very important that we position them for success. And almost all of these career tech education programs are free now. If you don't have the money at community college, it's pretty much free. In fact, I just saw a huge advertisement at Clovis Community College that said, no matter what your income, all classes free. This was just a few months ago. So, and at our school and at many other places, it's a fee structure at adult school that is extremely, extremely low. So there's opportunities out there. And the role for me as a leader would be to pair people with opportunities. We have a lot of opportunities. People don't know where they're at. And so that would be one of the first things I would do. And when you talk about bringing up parity with people, you can't expect a person that has never learned a skill to make the same amount of money as somebody that has learned a very important skill. For instance, there's a school that teaches people nothing but shipping. That's all they do. It's a program that just teaches people how to run ships across the ocean. And it is a career program. They have 100% hire rate and they get paid tons of money, and it only takes about a year. And so people get through that program, we're positioning them for success. So if we want to help people get good jobs, we've got to help pair them with the opportunities that will position them for those jobs. That's very, very important.
Thank you for that perspective. You know, you took over one of our questions on jobs and tackled it. But thank you for that perspective. Maria's got your next question.
Yes. Now on to the topic of water and agriculture.
Right.
So the Central Valley has long been known as the breadbasket of the nation, producing almost 10% of the nation's entire agriculture output. However, as the recent decade has shown, the area is also prone to lengthy drought periods. This loss of surface water has necessitated an even greater need for extraction of groundwater and, in some cases, a reduction of agriculture operations. What would you do as a congressional representative going forward to ensure that our citizens and farmers in the Central Valley have the water access they need to continue being the breadbasket of the nation?
Yeah. You know, actually, just California alone, if you take just 3 areas, nuts, fruits, and vegetables, we produce 50 to 55% of the nation's nuts, fruits, and vegetables. And that makes me think this is almost a national security issue. The last thing we want is to be dependent on other countries for a food source. So this is a huge thing. The second thing I want to say before I answer your question is that this whole area of water and how it's been allocated and the Delta smelt and salmon, there's one word I want to get across through this entire time, and that's the word results. Results. You gotta always think about results. I don't care how many bills somebody's written. I don't care how long they've been in politics. My opponent has been in for 40 years. One thing, results. So what I would look at, first of all, is I would go ahead and I'd say, first of all, what they've been doing, has it worked? Well, it hasn't. You can't even find a Delta smelt. I mean, you go up and down, they troll and try to look for them because they're trying to figure out, has their program been successful? You can't even hardly find one. In the last year, I think they've found 2 trolling up and down the Delta. So in different spots. So first of all, it hasn't been successful. And so what's happening, yes, have we had droughts? Yes, but we've had droughts over the last 100, 200 years. Trust me, it goes on and on. And then what they'll do is they'll say, well, back in 1970, we had the rainfall has dropped by X number of inches since 1970. Well, what they'll do is they'll pick the highest year, 1970, and compare it to now, right? So you got to look at everything over time. There's a lot of variables to this. So as far as the drought is concerned, you got to be able to store water. It's really simple. You got to be able to store water. And so what's happened now is the state of California has put together, is that somebody else on? I don't know. But anyway, the state of California has put together 30 billion with a B, $30 billion of dam bonds and water bonds since 2000 on the California propositions. Not one dam has been built. And so what happens is you get people that make people believe they're voting for a dam, but the wording is very well thought out to where they're not mandated to build dams. And so what happens is all this water goes on out to regulatory committees and bureaucracies. And then they go, oh, for Temperance Flat, we've got $175 billion left for the dam. And people go, well, wait a minute, it costs $3 to $4 billion to build a dam. You can't build a dam with 175 billion. It'd be like me saying to you or to Jesse, hey, I'm going to build a house for you. Here's $100. Well, you can't even buy permits for $100. You just can't do it. So how to solve this problem? We've got to be able to have water storage, period. Even on good years, they don't give the farmers the water they've needed. So they've pulled back so much water from these farmers. And then here's what's happened. They give incentives to the farmers to put in drip lines. And the drip lines don't refill the aquifers, right? I don't know if you're a farmer or farmer background, but everyone I know in farming, almost everyone does drip lines now. There's still some flood irrigation. Well, those don't fill the aquifers. It just goes down a few feet. And whereas when I was a kid, we did flood irrigating in the vineyard and the water just soaks and goes down and it fills the aquifers. So they provide an incentive to save money by putting in drip lines. The aquifers go down and then they say, oh, since you have not replenished the aquifers, we're not going to give you any more water. Well, it's a lose-lose then. And so we're losing, with Sigma, we could lose up to 1.5 million acres of the most productive land in the world. It's horribly frustrating. And so containment, also there's what's called water banking. I know a guy in Merced County that has 7 million acre feet that he has water bank. That means he has aquifers underneath where the water has soaked in extra water and he's ready to pump and he can't get permits to pump it. It's all government is the worst enemy of anyone when it comes to being efficient, effective, and getting things done. And so we got to have water, and to have water, you got to have water storage.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your input on that question. We appreciate that.
You bet.
And again, just a reminder, we encourage our audience to ask any questions. You can use the chat function or the raise hand function, and we will unmute you. All right. So on to our next question.
All right.
Thank you for that. So our next question centers around the topic of housing. So UC Merced's 2019-2020 enrollment sat at just under 10,000 students. This growing student base has caused a surge in the number of residents within our county. The California Department of Finance reported that the county is the fastest growing in the state, showing that more than 4,000 people moved into Merced County last year. This has led to Merced's notoriously low vacancy rate of just 1%. However, in some cases, in an effort to create additional housing, like in the case of the Tioga, older housing units are being renovated to attract individuals with higher incomes, such as professors and staff. As a congressional representative, how would you promote the development of affordable housing units that the average American can afford?
I know about housing because I've built about 10 or 12 homes myself. And I've acted as the general contractor. It's called owner builder when you do it. And so I've acted as the general contractor, hiring out my own cement people, rough plumbing, electrical, HVAC, and so forth, sheetrock and everything. So here's one thing I would tell you. You know how I told you a lot of times government could be the worst offender as far as helping people? The last 3 homes I've built have cost me $32,000 to $35,000 in fees, taxes, and assessments before I even got my first contractor out there. So you want to save $30,000 to $35,000 per home? Quit taxing everybody so much. It just raises the price tremendously. The regulation is unbelievable. And by the time you pay all these fees, first of all, it takes forever. I just got a variance. I don't know if you know what a variance is, but I just got a variance in Fresno County a while back. And it was just because they said my shed was too close to an easement. And they said it needed to be 35 feet away. Well, it's a shed next to a driveway is what it was. It took 8 months and $4,000. That's just ridiculous. So how do you keep the price low? Well, get rid of some of these things that we need some regulation. Believe me, you've got to have some regulation. But too much regulation where it's just ridiculous and holding people back and costing people so much money is ridiculous. The other thing I would say is this. I don't know if you remember, you're pretty young, but I don't know if you remember the big crash that happened a while back, a few years ago, with real estate and everything across the nation, really, but really in California. And one of the things that was happening is they were trying to get everybody in houses. Well, the issue was a lot of people didn't qualify for homes. They just didn't. They didn't have the income. And so what was going on is that they were telling banks, I don't know if you remember this organization, but there's an organization called Acorn that was supported by the government. And somebody would come into the bank, and I know this because I have a number of banker friends, and they wouldn't qualify. They just didn't have enough money. And so then what would happen is they'd go to Acorn or another agency, and they'd sign off a note, and they'd say, no, give them a loan. They'd give them a loan, and they'd say, they're going to foreclose. We're going to have to foreclose. They don't qualify. They can't pay this loan back. And of course, they couldn't. And so we had millions, literally millions of homes going into foreclosure. And everybody blamed the banks, and everybody blamed this for foreclosing on these people. They didn't qualify in the first place. So first of all, let's get people to the point, a level of income where they do qualify. That's where these jobs and just job training and the career tech education programs come in. You can't just make a house. The whole goal of being a contractor is make money, right? I mean, you got to make money. And I'm sure you're going to have a job someday. You're not going to work for free. Everybody, the whole purpose of having apartments, having homes, having anything, you got to have some income off of it. And so take away some of the regulation, streamline programs, get them done faster so that you can provide a home at a better price, and then qualify people by getting them through career tech education programs where they get good income, where they can afford the homes. And that's the best way to do it. It's not a big program where you start giving things away for free. It doesn't work that way. And so let people attain all they can attain in life. People have so much potential. Just give them opportunity and pair them with that potential.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that perspective.
You bet.
Maria's got the next question.
Sure.
Yes, our next topic is homelessness.
Yeah.
So, according to a group of homelessness service providers and advocates, the Merced County Continuum of Care, there were over 600 homeless individuals living within Merced County in 2019. This is an increase of 93 people from just the year prior. Understanding that this is a huge issue with lots of organizations putting effort into this, what should the role of the US government be to deal with homelessness? And what would your specific approach be as a member of Congress?
Yeah. First of all, I'd say in California, it's mostly a state issue. It's not a federal issue, but I mean, we can talk about both. But let me just talk about the background on this. And by the way, I have a lot of experience in alcohol and other drug abuse issues. Not everybody that's homeless is a drug addict. We know that, right? But a high percentage are. And the question you have to ask yourself is, did, for instance, mental illness come before the addiction, or did the addiction exacerbate or start a mental illness, correct? So people can be drug addicts. They can be not drug addicts, but have a mental illness. They could be just a down and out person where they lost their home, right? So there's a lot of options, but the highest percentage statistically is that 75 to 80% of these people are drug addicts. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever worked with people that have drug addiction issues, but people that are addicted to drugs do not make the best decisions in life, right? You just don't. That's one of the consequences of being addicted to drugs. So here's the thing that's happened now in California. Prop 47, Prop 57, Prop 109 basically tied the hands of doing a lot of things for the homeless. For instance, people can now openly do fentanyl, meth, heroin. Nobody does anything about it. And so you can't help somebody if they're getting, their meth every day from somebody. It's very difficult to help somebody. The answer isn't just give them a hotel room. That's been a disaster in the Bay Area, by the way. And so the way we help these people is we have to strengthen our laws. You can't just help people by putting them someplace and saying, go ahead, give them a free needle. At least they won't die of AIDS, but they're going to die of an overdose, right? I mean, we have, in 2017 alone, we had 72,000 people in this country alone die of drug overdoses. So the answer isn't, oh, just give them free needles. 400,000 needles and syringes are given out every month in San Francisco. 20,000 are given out every month right here in Fresno. So what do we do about that? We have to force them, this sounds a little harsh, but we've got to force them into a situation where we're providing housing for them, but help along the way. So in other words, we don't want them leaving, getting their drugs and coming back. It's got to be a place that is a locked down place where they have medical care, they have mental care, they have dental care, they have bathrooms, and they have food, and they have lodging. That's the whole approach. And get this, once they start getting clean, now we can start teaching them a skill if they don't have one already. That is so important because we want them to be self-sufficient someday. And so, in fact, I will tell you, and I don't want to say too much about this, but there's a facility I personally know of right now that has rooms, it's got all the infrastructure, it's got everything we need. And we could go through, you guys probably, I don't know if you have these, do you have Daryl's mini storages in Merced? We have them here in Fresno, and they're storage units. But you can build something like that that is insulated, has air conditioning and heating for very low prices. You can build those for about $50 to $60 a square foot, which is dirt cheap. And help, so they get housing, and they would have all these needs met, but it can't be a place where they can just take off whenever they want to. They did a study in Fresno. They said only 1% of the homeless actually would accept help. 1%. I have a homeless guy that I see almost every day when I go to the post office, and he asked for money. I said, I'm not going to give you money, but I'll tell you what, I'll take you down to the rescue mission right now. Hop in the car, we'll go to the rescue mission. He never takes me up on it. He doesn't want the help because he's strung out on drugs. I know him for a fact. He's strung out on drugs. Well, how do you help a person like that unless you can get them away from that for a while?
Well, thank you so much for your input. Those are definitely some points that we can all consider. So thank you. And a reminder to our audience that we will have an open Q&A questions at the very end. So if you're not asking any questions right now, make sure you're getting those ready for the end of our discussion.
Good.
All right, and Mr. Cookingham, as a former educator, I hope you appreciate our next topic area of education. So in too many communities, parents struggle to find high quality educational options for their children. This is especially true in places where many families are low income. What role should the federal government play in eliminating opportunity gaps for students from families with low incomes? Can more be done at the federal level to ensure that all schools have the resources they need to provide students high quality education?
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of school choice, huge proponent of that. And, I want to give you a little bit of my background on it because you'll understand my heart on this. Um, my kids, we didn't have the money to send our kids to private schools and that sort of thing, but we sent our kids to good schools and good public schools. And everybody should have had that same opportunity that my kids had. If they were at a school that had failing teachers and failing students, I mean, we've got some districts in this nation, you can't find a kid in the entire district that's on grade level in math or English. You can't even find them. Well, those are failing areas. So they need more opportunity. So I'm a huge believer in school choice. When I took over as the principal of Clovis Online School, it had been open 2 years. And I had a board member come up to me. There were only 12 students that returned after 2 years. And the first month, all we did is apologize to parents about how it was run. And I had a board member come up to me and he stuck his finger right in my chest. He started poking my chest and he said, "You better get that school going or we're shutting it down." And I actually like what he did because I like that kind of challenge. And I talked to the staff there and I said, these students need to be treated like they're clients of ours, like it's our business and that we have to provide the best product possible for these students because they deserve it. And so we changed everything. We did a 180-degree change at the school in everything we did. And thank goodness I had an amazing group. It wasn't just me. There was a group of people that had the same value system. And that school went from 12 students to it's over 600 today. 600 students. And by the way, it got up to 500 after just 3.5 years. 500 students from 12 students. And it's because if you have a good product, people like it. If there's a reason there's a lot of iPhones sold. It's a good product, okay? And there's a reason people would come to that school because we provided a great online education and we had a great platform for our curriculum. It was amazing. The company spent $100 million perfecting it in different languages. So you could tell if a kid was working hard or if it was idle time. In other words, if he wasn't doing anything, you knew he was playing a game while he had the teacher. If you weren't actively involved, it was idle time. So we knew if they were actually working or not. So they spent a lot of money to really make this program, it's called Edgenuity, program good. So my feeling on this, if you really want to bring equity to education, school choice, that's a big deal. And then we've got to have teachers and administrators that say, these students are incredible people that need the very best education. And I need to provide that for them like my life depended on it. That's what's important.
Thank you, Mr. Cookingham. I agree with that perspective. So we got a question in the chat from Priya. Priya, you raising your hand. Would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
Hi, thank you, Jesse. That was a great question. That was going to be my question about schools. So hi, Mr. Cookingham. My name is Reddy. I'm a Merced resident. I just have so going back with the school question, and I know you're an educator, so I want you to kind of help me understand, our achievement gap between white students and brown, Hispanic, and Black students in the schools here. There's a huge discrepancy. And schools are getting thousands of dollars in Title I funding every year, but the achievement gap is not going away. What do you think is a responsibility of a government official like you, if you get elected? How are you going to work with the school boards here, the school administration? What do you think your role in all of this is?
Yeah. Just real quickly, do you know what LCFF is?
Oh yes, the LCAP, the LCSF. I go to all these meetings
because I want to talk about that.
Confusing, it's really confusing things too. Like I have a master's education, and I have difficulty understanding it because.
So let me talk. I just want to make sure you understand it, even though we have other people in this feed. But LCFF, and this is going to go back to something that kind of goes around the whole results issue, and it stands for Local Control Funding Formula. And what happened is they said if a school district has 55% of low income, English learner, or foster children, so you add those three together, 55%, they get a lot more money than other districts. And I'm not talking like a few $100s. I'm talking $2,000 to $3,000 per student, per student. Now, this came out about 8 years ago. And my first comment when it happened is I said, where's the accountability? How are you going to know if it's successful? Because you don't do anything unless you have a way to measure its success. Why do it if you don't have a way to measure success? And if you're not having success, then why do it? Why waste taxpayer money to do it? So sure enough, a whole thing came out just about a few months ago, and none of these schools could say what they did with the money. You're talking billions and billions and billions of dollars. And so this is something that has to happen in our school system. There must be accountability, and there's not accountability. When you put money to a program, you better show how that money is being sent to benefit the people that that money has been designated to. So if it's been designated to English learners and foster children and low economic, you better show directly how you help those people with that money and hold them accountable. And if they're not doing it, take the money away. That's how I feel about that. It has to be, you have to show results, and there has to be accountability for those results. Now I'm going to tell you something that you may not agree with, but I'm who I am, okay? Some of these things are issues that are, I would suggest anybody watching this, let me just suggest this, that look up, well, you used to be able to look up illegitimacy and crime, illegitimacy and the dropout rate, illegitimacy and schools and things like that, and truancy. And if you look up fatherless homes, for instance, and there are some communities that have more fatherless homes than others, you will see, don't take my word for it, just look at the studies. You used to be able to look up illegitimacy. You can't do it on Google anymore. You got to look up fatherless homes and things like that. But there is an absolute direct correlation with the breakdown of the family, and whether a person is in school, whether they're truant, whether there absolutely is. Don't take my word for it. Don't believe me. Just look at the studies when we're done with this thing. So there are some issues like that where there's been a tremendous breakdown of the families in this area, and it does impact outcomes at school. And as I've worked with students, and I worked for 5 years doing nothing but discipline at a local high school, you could see that variation with people. And I will tell you one other thing. I had some kids come into our groups. When I first started, we had success groups, and these success groups were filled with kids that had 3 or more D's, F's, or incompletes. And I talked to them and I said, this isn't mandatory that you come to this, but I'd love for you to come to our success groups and be involved with this. But I asked this group before they got into this big group, there might've been 80 in the room. I said, can I just ask you guys a question? I'm curious, how many of you are angry? Every hand out of 80 students, every hand went up. And as I got to know them in their small groups, it had to do with family dynamics. They felt abandoned by a dad. They felt abandoned by a mom. There were drug addiction in the parents and so forth. This impacts kids. And so I'm just telling you that there's excuse me, there's a lot of issues that play into this. It's not just 100% the school. Families got to come together. I had some groups that came in there and the girls were just doing great. By the way, we had 90% of our students improve in attendance, improve in, they improved attendance, improved their grades, and they had less discipline referrals. 90% success with those 3 areas in these success groups. But some of them came into me and they said, you know what, my friends, I'm doing well now. I'm doing well in school. And my friends go, what are you trying to do? Be like a white girl? And I'm thinking, this has nothing to do with color. It has nothing to do with white, black, brown. It has to do with working hard so that you can be successful in life and know how to read and write and do well. It's not a color thing. But they were being pressured to actually not do well in school by their friends. And so it's not as simple as just, let's hold the teachers accountable. That's very, very important. It's a whole dynamic of some things that I've seen across this nation where I just feel that culturally we're heading down some ways where a lot of kids are really hurting. I would tell you one other quick story on that. I remember I came to school one day and my daughter was with me and she started talking about a girl that we saw. And she goes, oh, that girl, blah, 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 blah. And I said, honey, you have no idea what that girl's gone through. I said, you have no idea. I said, I can't tell you what she has gone through because it's private, but I'm so grateful that she even comes to school. I'm just so thankful for her. We had a foster daughter for quite some time, and we had her for, we still talk all the time, and it was because her parents were methed out. Well, that's going to impact a person's education.
Thank you. I appreciate your answers. Also, although I don't agree with what you just said about fatherless homes and
Yeah, just do the studies. I don't want you to believe me. Just Google it. Look at every study.
I appreciate your answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Priya, as always, for great questions. And thank you, Mr. Cunningham, for that, or Cookingham, for that response. So I got another question for you. This one's on the topic of healthcare. So what do you view as the government's obligation, if any, to help American workers secure health insurance? Do you support the creation or continuation of programs such as Medicare for All or Obamacare? Do you have a different idea? If you support a government-related insurance plan, how would you pay for it? In short, what is your view on healthcare?
Yeah. Let me just talk about that for a while, because there's a big difference between supporting insurance and supporting healthcare. Huge difference. So let me just explain this. There are 14,000 free healthcare clinics across this nation that are federally funded. There are 800 in California alone. And I happen to know one of the head people in Washington, D.C. that oversees these clinics. The whole role is to help people that don't have the money to pay for their doctor visits. And so what has happened is we have all these opportunities and resources, and a lot of times people don't know where they're at. And so on my website, for instance, I've listed all of the different free healthcare centers in the 16th district, in Merced and all the other areas, Livingston and other areas. It's very important that they know where those are at. That's a far cry than giving them free insurance. What happened with Obamacare is middle-class people that were paying, $800 a month for their health insurance, it doubled and tripled for them. I have a relative who it tripled for their insurance premium, and then their deductibles, which I think everybody knows what deductible is. That's you pay that before your insurance even starts kicking in. It tripled as well. So he was up to about $10,000 a year before his insurance even kicked in, and that was because of Obamacare. So Obamacare was not an answer. It did help some lower income people, but they didn't need the insurance. You have the free clinics. We have to show them where those free clinics are. I mentioned a while ago that we had a foster daughter, and she had some issues with her teeth. And so I called and said, is there a certain place you want us to take her? And they told me, and it was a wonderful place that did dental work. And she went in there, she was all scared and she was crying at first, and they just did a wonderful job with her. And it was all free. And I spoke to this friend of mine and I said, well, let me ask you a question. I said, does it matter if a person is here legally or not? And he goes, no, we don't check that out. We don't have time to mess with that. And I said, well, let me ask you another question. Let's say a woman drove up and she had her hair all done, brand new Mercedes, and she said she had no money. Would you treat her for free? He said, yeah, because we don't have time to check her income level. We're there to help people, period. If they say they have no money, we treat them. So then I listened. I don't know if you know that one of the opponents in the primaries was Esmeralda Soria. And she was talking on a video about how her mother spends an awful lot of money on prescriptions. And so I called him. I said, what good, his name's, I'll just call him Dr. Ron, his first name. I said, Dr. Ron, what good does it do to have a clinic that's free if prescriptions are so expensive? He goes, Kevin, we provide prescriptions for $3 to $5 each, period. That way anybody can afford them, and they can come in there and then get the prescriptions and get the medical help that they need. Now, we also know that hospitals can't turn people away. So if they go in there and they determine, hey, this could be an appendicitis, they're going to get them to a hospital. So again, there's a big difference between insurance and providing healthcare for people. We need to provide healthcare for people. We're not cruel people. If somebody needs help, and we're not going to go, hey, sorry, you're not here legally. No, they need help. They're human beings and we need help. But providing insurance for them when other people can't even afford the insurance, why would you do that when they have opportunity to be at one of the clinics? I mean, these clinics are open longer than my clinic is open. So some of them are 24-hour day clinics. So we just need to show them where these are and guide them to those opportunities.
All righty. Thank you for that perspective.
You bet.
So we got another question and Marie is going to grab it.
Yes. So our next topic is immigration. So in June 2020, the Supreme Court of the United States blocked the Trump administration's plan to dismantle the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA program, that has protected over 800,000 qualifying undocumented immigrants from deportation. Then the Department of Homeland Security released a memo that announced that it would not accept initial DACA applications, not grant advance parole unless individuals meet exceptional circumstances, and shorten the current DACA protection and work authorization period from 2 years to 1 year for pending future renewal applications. So in your opinion, what would be the best way for Congress to address DACA?
Yeah. Tough situation. I don't know if you guys know this, but when Trump first got into office, he offered 1.8 million for a pathway to citizenship if we could get control of the border with a bollard barrier or whatever it may be. That was turned down. And so we're back to square one right now. Here's what I would do. I would start a program where I think you guys know we bring in 1.2 to 1.5 million immigrants a year into the United States legally, 1.2 to 1.5. Well, and there's certain amounts allotted to each country. So let's just say, I don't know what the number is, but let's say it's 250,000 from Mexico, let's say. I would reduce that number to maybe 150,000 and start absorbing 100,000 DACA. And the next year, same thing. 150,000, absorb another 100,000 of DACA students into our country. I had a situation at Clovis Adult School where I had a girl come in my office. She was in tears. And I said, what's wrong? And she said, well, they're going to kick me out of the licensed vocational nurse program. I said, well, why? And she said, well, my husband left me, took our daughter, and I'm staying with some people that are in the program with me. I have no money. She said, I paid everything except I owe $2,200 more, and I'm supposed to be done in 6 weeks. But they're going to kick me out because I don't have the other $2,200. And she says, here's the deal. I'm a DACA student. She says, I was brought over when I was 5. I go, I mean, I'd never dealt with this before. So I'm just like, well, I'm going to find you some help. So I got on the phone. I could not find her any help. People that were supposed to specialize in that said they couldn't help her. So I called her back in my office and said, guess what? You just got a $2,200 scholarship. You're done paying. You don't have to worry about it anymore. Finish up school and pass it on to somebody else someday. So we have to deal with this. You can't just keep shoveling under the rug. But if you want to have both sides happy, maybe somebody on this side, somebody on this side, reduce the number and start absorbing them in. They're good people. Now, if there's criminals, I don't have any, we got enough criminals, okay? If they have felonies and so forth, but if they've been productive and they've been going to school and you know, that sort of thing, we need to start absorbing them into our society. And one of the ways to do that is to maybe cut down on some of the first time people coming across and absorb some of the DACA each year until they're absorbed into our society.
Yes, thank you for your input. And yeah, just to touch on that, yeah, one of the requirements for DACA actually is that you can't have a criminal record. So I just want to point that out. And this
that again, that you can or can't? You
cannot, or else you won't qualify for DACA.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think this is a very important topic, especially with the DACA students we have at UC Merced, with our international students, and even with the incoming students that can no longer qualify for DACA. So yeah, thank you so much for your input. On to our next question.
Sure.
Thank you, Maria. So our next question revolves around the topic of taxes and fiscal responsibility. So the United States national debt just surpassed 27 trillion US dollars. Put that in perspective, that's equivalent to over $81,000 per citizen and over $216,000 per US taxpayer. That's an enormous amount of money, and it's only getting bigger as we speak. In fact, it's growing at nearly $100,000 every 3 seconds. And the truth is, the deficit grows tremendously under each party. Is there a way the US government can get the national debt under control, and how do we do it? Or is this something that'll just be a real concern for future generations?
You know, I used to be able to say many years ago that at least the Republicans are financially responsible. They're not. No, nobody is anymore. Not the Democrats, not the Republicans. And I'm telling you, you guys are the ones who are going to get screwed over. It's you guys. It's Jesse, it's Maria, and other young people, because it will collapse this economy. It will. The average family owes $160,000 in this debt, and that was before it went up to I think it's close to 28 trillion right now. And they just keep spending more. But here's what happens: every time somebody tries to cut something, there's so much public pressure. Oh, you're trying to throw grandpa throw grandpa off the cliff. You're going to starve children, this sort of thing. And everybody jumps back and goes, oh, we can't defund that, or we can't lower the amount of funding for that. And so we just keep spending more and more. And you guys are the ones that are going to get destroyed. Because when the economy collapses and your money isn't worth anything, and it doesn't cost anymore $3 for a loaf of bread, but costs $3,000 for a loaf of bread, you're in trouble. And so this should mostly concern you younger people. Hey, I'm 62. You know, what happens, happens. I've had a great life, but you deserve a better life. And so you should be fighting. You should be fighting these people that just keep spending and spending and spending. And it is not a revenue issue with taxes. It is a spending issue. Everything they take, they spend and spend and spend. And it's wasted, so much of it. So I would just say this regarding our debt. This is probably one of my biggest concerns. And I tell you, I don't know if you know this, almost 49% of the population pays no federal taxes. So you've heard a million times, the rich need to pay their fair share. How many times have we heard that, right? Now, I'm just a regular guy from education, but the top 1% pays more taxes than the bottom 90%. It's almost by thirds. It's like 0 to 90% pays just around a third, and then 91% to 99% pay about a third, and that top 1% actually pays 37%. So it's a little bit more than the other two. So people pay a lot of money on taxes, or corporations and business. Some get off free. Well, change the tax code. Who wants to pay more taxes than you need to? Change the tax code if you don't like that. And Congress complains about this all. Well, they're the ones that make the laws related to taxes. I personally think I'd rather have a flat tax system. I think everybody needs to have skin in the game. And I have tons of stories of why I believe that. I don't know that we have the time, but it's already 7:19, so I better be quiet. But yeah, you guys should be very concerned about all this money that's being overspent. Yeah.
All righty. I appreciate your perspective on that topic as well. Maria's got your next question right now.
Yes, so this will be our final question. As like you mentioned, we are kind of cutting it close to 7:30. So our last question that is pre-selected is on climate change.
Mm-hmm.
So regardless of the cause, 17 of the 18 warmest years since modern record keeping began have occurred since 2001. What effect does this warming trend have on our country, and what steps would you take as the congressional candidate to address this issue and its effects on our community, especially in Merced?
Yeah. I'm 62, and all through my life, we've heard of different, acid rain, the glaciers melting. In fact, there are places right now that have signs that say this glacier will be melted by 2020. Well, now they're having to take the signs away because they're not melted. So is there climate change? I think there's climate change all the time. The question is, how much of it is related to man? What are we doing? Is it 1%? Is it 5%? The first thing you learn in statistics is about variables. There's a million variables that can impact truth of a subject matter. What I wouldn't do, let me tell you what I wouldn't do. I wouldn't spend $40 trillion dealing with it when most of the issue with pollution and carbon emissions are coming from Indonesia, India, China, places like that. We've actually done pretty well in the United States. So what would I do? I take a common sense approach and say, well, who wants to have dirty air? Nobody wants to have dirty air. Do we have some ways that we can help with the air quality here? Let's deal realistically, for instance, with our forests. I don't know I do know, because I go to Merced all the time. You have just as bad air quality as we do right now because of all the fires, right? And I can remember 2 or 3 years ago, I was with my wife and we were going up to Hume Lake and we were coming over the pass. And I said, can you believe how many trees are dead? I go, when a fire hits, whether it's lightning or some person doing this, it's going to be like matchsticks just going off across this whole place because there were so many dead trees. Well, what happens is that's federal forest. So the federal forest goes to the state of California, and it's the state of California as they set the regulations on air quality. So the federal government has a certain level. You got to meet this level at least on air quality. But then the state of California said, but we want it at this level. We want to raise it. Nothing wrong with that, except for one thing. When the federal government would come in and say, we need to clean out these dead trees, we need to get the roads going back, the fire roads going back, and they're all washed out so we can get to fires if we need to. The state of California said, no, because it'll mess with the fire quality. The burning underneath will impact the air quality. And so they wouldn't let them do it. So the federal government's going, okay, we want to get in there and manage our forests. You're not letting us. And now look what happens. We've got fires everywhere, all up and down the West Coast, and it's causing the worst air quality we have ever had. And yet there's other states that have the same amount of forestation, and they're not having it. So we don't have climate change just in California, not in those states. We have a lot of dead trees, though. And so they need to be managed. So what is the answer with climate change? I have heard people, I actually just heard a scientist a while back talk about taking cores of ice out of Antarctica that they studied CO2 and the emissions and so forth. They said we had more thousands of years ago than we have right now. So I would just say, take a realistic look. Let's help cut down on pollution. Let's help cut down on trash and all the different things that are going on. But I'm not spending $40 trillion on it. You got these people coming around saying we're going to retrofit every house and this sort of thing. It's just ridiculous. It's going to destroy people. And then again, we just got through finishing about the debt. $40 trillion, and we're already at $28 trillion. Don't plan on any future if that happens, because your money, it'll be worthless. So yeah, I do think there's some climate change. I think climate has changed all through history. Carbon was higher degrees 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, according to these ice cores, according to these scientists. So I don't know what degree we're playing, but I hate pollution. So I would like to clean up our air. And one of the ways we do that is we manage our forests and properly. And it wouldn't hurt to help manage some of our car emissions a little more too as well.
Hey, thank you for that, Mr. Cookingham. I know we told you that was the last question, but actually we got one more submitted anonymously through the chat. So it asks, so nearly 70% of UC Merced students are Pell Grant eligible, meaning they and their families qualify as low income. Right. What types of federal student aid would you support? Expansion of Pell Grant / student loan forgiveness ?
Yeah, so the good thing about Pell Grants, it's a federal grant, whereas CalWORKs is not. There's CalWORKs at Clovis Adult, we did Pell Grants, we did CalWORK grants, we did Department of Rehab grants, we even had grants for military spouses and so forth, one of the 2 schools in the state. So I have no problem with that. I mean, I want to set people up for success, but again, with accountability. I don't want a kid in school for 8 years kicking around and doing this and that. There has to be guidelines. I know there are already some guidelines, but they tend to not hold people accountable to the degree that I would. But absolutely, we need to help people get positioned for success. But one other thing I would say is, one of the district I came from, I think for many years, they just said, you got to get a college diploma. You got to go to college. You got to go to college. College isn't for everybody. Some people want to learn a skill. Some people want to learn, when I say a skill, I mean, like we talked about before, electrical, plumbing, whatever it may be. You know what these people are making in the Bay Area that are apprentice in electrical and plumbing? They're making $100 an hour in many of these jobs, and they're union jobs. And so I would just say this, let's set people up for success, but again, hold them accountable and look at the results. If it's not working, you better review it and say, what are we going to make to improve the end results of these grants? Don't just give out money haphazardly. There have to be strings attached to it where people are going full blast. On the community college level, we have so many people failing classes, and they're failing classes just because, it's free money, and if you get free money, a lot of times it's not appreciated. And so people need to appreciate that money and work hard. And if they don't, pull it. Just like I've said, schools need to be accountable, students need to be accountable as well.
All right, thank you for that, and thank you for all of your answers tonight. Maria's got one last thing for you.
All right, so before we end our conversation, we'd like to give the candidate a minute or so for any closing remarks. So Mr. Cookingham, what would you like our audience members to remember about you tonight?
Yeah, you know, the one word that I said I'd say over and over again is results. And I'm such a results oriented person. My opponent's been around, like I said, for 40 years, and you can see how this district looks. You can see the unemployment rate. You can see the trash. You can see the homelessness. And many of these things you don't need to go through Congress on. You can start pulling people together and lead without getting a bill through Congress. That's the cop out. Well, I tried to take it to Congress and, didn't pass. And blah. You don't need to wait for Congress to start a job program. You don't need to wait for Congress to start a cleanup program. You don't need to do that. You do need to change some laws to deal with homelessness and crime. You do. That's going to take a little longer. You do need to deal with some people to deal with the water issue. That's not going to be as fast. So I'm just being honest with you. I'm not going to tell you I'll do something that I can't do. I can't immediately change laws, and I can't immediately change laws related to water, but I can start working on jobs, and I can start working on the cleanup and bring pride back to the 16th district. So if there's one thing that I could get across to everybody that's watching this, whether you agree with me or disagree with me, by the way, I have people very much on the left side that are voting for me because they say, I've seen what you've done in the past, and I know you have a passion for this 16th district. You will get it done. In fact, probably a third of the people that are my volunteers are Democrats, and I'm a Republican, and they're helping me and they're passionate about it because they see that I'm results oriented. You will see changes within the first 2 years that you haven't seen in the last 30 years. And that's just the way I am. I don't sleep at night unless I see progress. So if there's one thing I can leave with the people is hold me accountable. You will see results, and I hope they vote for me. This actually is no longer November 3rd. It's the whole month, basically. So I hope you vote for me. Give me a chance. If I don't do it within 2 years, if I don't do those two things within 2 years that I just mentioned, vote me out.
All righty. Thank you for that, Mr. Cookingham. Thank you for participating and for letting us get to know you a little better. To all of our participants, please, please, please make sure that you register to vote by going to registertovote.ca.gov. Join us for our upcoming candidates in conversation this Thursday, October 8th, with Anthony Martinez, candidate for Merced Mayor. Visit events.ucmerced.edu for future dates and candidates.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for